Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tea with HRT, where we talk about the people side of business and all the day to day challenges that come along with leading teams. And for those of you who are new here, I'm Brenda, Director of Marketing at HR Transformed, and I'm joined by Allyns, our CEO and founder.
Hi. So today we're going to be talking about something that I absolutely love. It's a season that usually causes a lot of stress for HR teams or small business owners, and that is, drum roll please, open enrollment. So today we're going to be discussing benefit strategy, broker partnerships, and employee experience as we head into Q4, which is usually when a lot of the open enrollments are happening. I feel like I say this in every episode, but that's because I am super excited for today's episode because we're joined by these two incredible partners who I've had the pleasure of knowing for many, many years. I don't even know how much at this point, but it's definitely over 10 years at least. Um, Chris and Shawn from MMA. And I have to say, if there's anyone who can make us help make sense of open enrollment and the chaos, it's these two. They've been my partners for a long time in this. They do this work every single day. They partner with organizations to build these strong benefit strategy and actually, like truly support HR teams running them. So, Chris and Shawn, welcome to the show. And for our listeners who don't know who you are, share a little bit about yourselves and the work that you're doing over at MMA.
Chris Labatt from Marshall Clinton Agency. I am in the employee benefits practice. I've been in the industry for a long time. We help employers with communicating the plan to employees, which we're going to talk about today, as well as managing the finances and managing renewals on an ongoing basis. So thank you for having us.
Yeah. Thank you for that warm intro. So Shawn Hill, also Marsh McLennan Agency, been in the industry a long time as well. No need to quantify it and put numbers on it, but excited to be here and share the knowledge that we have about this topic of open enrollment.
All right. Well, it's nice to finally meet you both and kind of put faces to names. I hear your names float around like our workplace, right, between Allyns and Farron. And yeah, it's super excited to have this conversation. We talked about this briefly before kind of recording, but as a Canadian, wrapping my head around US open enrollment and just the sheer amount of prep work that goes on behind the scenes is just a massive learning curve, right? It's a lot. So before we dive into specific plans and numbers, I kind of want to start there with all the prep work. So from your experience, how do you successfully prepare employers and HR teams for open enrollment before rates even hit everyone's desks?
That's a good question, Brenda. One of the key components is just prepping early. Start the process before you even get your renewal.
Mm.
Start with reviewing how your employees actually get information. Not everybody sits at a desk or regularly checks email, and map out where your employees work, what devices they use, and which employees are hardest to reach. You also want to take a look at any barriers that you might have to communicating effectively. This can be reaching employees or even easily reaching family members, making
Mm.
sure the information is accessible for them, and even language barriers. And you want to make it convenient for people to access the information and think about the timing of your different communications. You can develop a communication map. Shawn, I'll hand it off to you to talk a little bit more about your experience.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So even a look to build the communication framework in advance. And you also have to consider items such as mobile-friendly resources. As you know, we are in a digital world now, so we necessarily are trying to stay away from paper. Creating print materials with QR codes, utilizing AI, which is becoming very, very popular. Creating some talking points for direct managers. As we know, that's the first line of defense. FAQs for employees so they'll feel empowered because they understand exactly what they're looking for. Text reminders, which kind of goes to the mobile friendly resources, video content, and creating a central hub for all of this benefit communication where it's a one-stop shop. Also, these employers have to treat open enrollment as a campaign and not just this one-time announcement, right? You have to do it year round. You just don't want to touch the employees just at the open enrollment time. Also, a lot of decisions are not just based around the employee themselves. They include the spouses, partners, family members. So you have to have that information be accessible to outside of work. So just to kind of put a bow on it, a good OE goal is for an employer to make the information easy for the employees to find, understand, digest, as well as revisit when it comes time to it.
Not always easy.
Yeah. Like on our show, we always talk about the importance of having the right community and the right partners. And I guess I want to hear both sides of it. Allyns, from your experience, what does a strong broker partnership look like? And how can brokers act as a true extension of the HR team during open enrollment?
So I think Chris and Shawn will agree that there's three different types of HR people that they tend to work with. The one that's like, you are behind the scenes, you do not talk to our employees, we will handle all the communication, you just help keep us on track and give us the information we need. That's one. The second one is, I am hands off as HR. I don't want to answer any question. I don't want to get up in front of my team. I want you to deliver all the news because sometimes it's bad news. Like your rates are going up by 25% or whatever the number is going to be, right? So then there's that HR person. And then there's the one in between, which I would hope I was at points because I may have started as that first one where it's like, this is my open enrollment. So then there's that in between that like truly show up as partners of, I'm your day-to-day person. You ask me these questions all the time, but guess who we've got here? We've got these experts. And so when I met Shawn and when I met Chris, it was one of those like Starsky and Hutch moments where it was like these two were the dynamic duo that got up in front of our staff and gave the right amount of like real hardcore information, direct, friendly, knowledgeable, but also digestible. And also the right kind of energy where some people gravitated towards Chris and some people gravitated towards Shawn in terms of how they both approached the open enrollment process. And I, for the first time in many years, was like, oh, I think I finally found the right partners. And so I was so blessed to be now that in between, like I'm the everyday. Open enrollment happens for new hires all the time. It's the same sort of process, but then all the strategic work and the partnership of like, Chris dropping me a note saying we've got to get the census done. This is what we're seeing in the market. Or Shawn would say, hey, look at this is what I just discovered with this other client I'm working with. You guys are very similar. I want to talk about strategy. There's all of that that happens year round, like you all were saying. So it's all about what kind of HR person are you? And do you have the right partners who are going to show up and be an extension, but also just a complement? And that's what I found in these two folks.
Yeah, that's right on, Allyns. I agree with you 100%. And that goes to a broker partner. Somebody's not just delivering a renewal, but they're collaborating with you and they're helping you build a clear communication strategy. They're really helping HR think about employer behavior, not just the benefit content. And that can start with if you're a large enough group and you're getting paid claims data, a broker can help you review that data and help communicate to the employees where there might be gaps. You can identify it through the utilization. And that can be the appropriate place to receive care, like ER visits versus urgent care versus virtual visits. Looking at the utilization, see if something's being overutilized or underutilized. The importance of a free physical. Everyone's entitled to free physical under all the plans, regardless of what you have under healthcare reform. And establishing a relationship with a primary care physician so you can get that early diagnosis and get ahead of any chronic conditions with treatments. These are all things you can see in the utilization, as well as common diseases that are prevalent in the employee population. Most carriers have disease management programs, musculoskeletal conditions, diabetes, high blood pressure. You want employees to be aware of these programs and engage in them to help them out. This is the type of data that can really help you drive effective communications at open enrollment and year round. And also a broker is going to help you by providing different tools. Like they can have the tools available and you choose which ones you want to use, whether it's email templates, mobile apps, text, posters, videos, microsites, or like Shawn referenced, self-service AI tools.
Yeah, I just want to add to Eileen, you used a word that was very important, digestible. We have to make the language plain that the employees can understand and avoid using jargon, right? We can't use what's an EPO, PPO, HMO. It kind of goes over the employee's head and then they check out. Another big thing that we have to do is create that central source of information, that one-stop shop where we're not sending the employees looking for something, where they can just click one button or go to one place and find it. And very important is manager enablement, right? That is that direct source. They always go to their manager. So we have to give the manager simple talking points to kind of get the conversation going. And then if it gets more complex, that's when we can shift and pivot to other individuals. And then help reduce that HR burden by supporting the prep for OE, right? The FAQs that we mentioned before, the decision support content. What do I need? An EPO or PPO, out of network, in network. It's all confusing to employees.
Yeah.
Multilingual materials, right? Someone may not have English as their first language, so the translation from may be a little difficult. So we have to make sure that things are in multi-languages if applicable, and year-round education. Right. You just can't touch someone during open enrollment period. You have to be able to have that access to them year round. So in short, we want to help the HR move from, hey, we just sent the message to the employees actually receiving the message, understanding the message, and most importantly, using the information that we have disseminated to them. So that's how a strong broker partnership should look.
And it's always so valuable when you're in the room more than when you're virtual too, because someone who's very much adamant about bringing up their personal health information or asking a question that's very personal to them around fertility or um, their mental health, they may not want to bring that up on a Zoom call, or they might miss an opportunity to just pull you aside and say, I'm not really sure what this means, even though it makes sense, but what does it mean for me? And I think that's like one of the benefits of having a partner that is so embedded in working really closely with HR, because HR could also say, let me have you take a call with our broker so that you can do that, and kind of keeps HR out of some of that too.
Yeah, definitely.
Brenda, from a marketing and communications perspective, because you do both here at HRT, what are you seeing when it comes to supporting the team and figuring out how to make the benefits like clearer for the employees?
So, from a communications perspective, it's helpful for us to look at it through the lens of our disc birds, right? Because everyone processes information differently. So, we have our eagles who just want super high level summary, what's in it for me, what's not. And then there's our owls who want every single data point just so they can consider making their decisions. So, I think, like you said, Shawn, earlier, the biggest mistake we can do is handing all of these different personalities the exact same 50-page jargon and then expecting them to understand this whole new language and then pick their health insurance, right? So at HRT, what we do for our clients during open enrollment is we take all of the information we get from our brokers, we turn it into visual decks, we turn it into info sessions, we turn it into benefits overviews, just so that everyone gets exactly what they need in the way that works for them. But Eileen's kind of flipping it back to you, since you're the one that's sitting in on those strategic business calls with founders, executive teams. When you look at the strategic side of open enrollment, what is the biggest trap that you see businesses falling into?
I think that it's kind of twofold when it comes to budget, because, as a strategic HR partner, I'm always mindful of what are the percentages that we're seeing in terms of contributions. We work with a lot of creative agencies, for example, so we have insight into what a lot of the other creative agencies are doing in terms of their percentages of contribution, or even if they don't contribute at all, if they don't contribute anything to the family side, if they do a buy up or a buy down, and they're usually coming to me first. So that's when I'm like, I think you need another partner here, or we need to bring in Chris and Shawn into the conversation, or, we really need to think, how do you make it affordable, and learning what even people outside of the creative industry are doing in terms of these things. And while we have, X amount of clients, these folks have so much more, and we'll have also what's new, what's relevant. So yeah, the whole communication piece of it, I'm usually getting that question first, and then I punt it over to my friends here.
Yeah, we find employees are often struggling, not because the information is not available, it's available, but more because it's hard to find or hard to understand or hard to use. They struggle with things like, you have multiple medical plans. What's the differences between these plans? Which one's best for me? And certain benefits and jargon like pre-tax plans, HRAs, HSAs, FSAs, disability plans, like the importance of the disability plan and how they work, and some newer benefits, such as fertility support, caregiving, pet benefits, are often topics where they just don't know how to wrap their arms or their heads around these types of plans. Especially true if the terms used to describe the benefits are complicated and they're not simplified, and if you have a multilingual workforce, that can definitely complicate things, as we talked about earlier. They also often struggle to know where to go to find information or resources. I mean, these days, support for mental health is a hot topic. It's often difficult to decipher which vendor or website or document has the right answers to the questions I have. And oftentimes, I experience this myself. I'll be delivered the information the first time. It's like, oh, that's good. I got to get to that eventually. And then later, trying to figure out where the heck do I have to go to find that information?
Mhm.
So there's a lot of complications that employees struggle with, and that's why it's important to have a clear path. And Shawn, I'll hand it over to you to talk a little bit more about what you're seeing.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback and borrow some of your explanation, it's plain language, right? We can't put it in benefit or HR jargon, and then digestible, manageable sections instead of a long, dense PDF, which employees will get tired of reading after a while. And then something that we may not kind of think about, but making something mobile first, meaning that we program it to be on a phone, versus putting it on a desktop and making it smaller so that it'll work okay on the phone. As we know, everybody has a phone these days, so that's going to be their first entry point to obtaining access. And then that is that one clear starting point for access. Where are we housing all of this data? Where is the repository? And then multiple formats. As we all know, people learn things different ways. So you make sure you have short videos, you have guides, you have the FAQs, you have the hubs that employees can search, you have print for those old school individuals like myself who want to have that paper in their hand. So you do have some print, and you can make it with a new school twist and put a QR code on it. So those type of things. And then repetition is key, right? You just have to reinforce the key messages over time throughout the entire plan year instead of just sending a message once thinking employees are going to grasp it and digest it, and making sure support is available for families and household decision makers as well. As you know, the decision maker may be at home, so the employee may say, I have to take it home on the weekend, but you have to make sure that the data is accessible to that other party or that other decision maker. Multiple language and formats, as I spoke about, and self-support service, where we are removing the HR department from it. And what it does, it enables the employee to kind of make an educated decision because we are giving them that power, and it makes them a more powerful consumer. And then in turn, they feel a little more prouder when they have these employee benefits.
And then there are those people who you've given them all the resources, they have all the paperwork they need, and they still just want like a conversation. And here's the really interesting part, what we've been seeing on our side, which is also something that happened in my own life. My son turned 26. I'm literally at his birthday dinner and I turned to him and I'm like, did you get all the stuff to enroll in your own benefits? Because you know you just lost benefits, right? He goes, yeah, I've been meaning to get that. And I'm like, your mom is an HR person. She does this all the time. And he's not the only one. I mean, I was pretty embarrassed, honestly. I was like, get me everything like literally today. But we get emails all the time on like, I just turned 26. My insurance ends in 2 days. What am I supposed to do? Right. So there's also that like missed opportunity. And sometimes they just need a chat. So I want you to address, Chris and Shawn, I want you to address to anyone who's a leader, a business owner in HR, or even like turning 26 or just got a divorce and is having a qualifying life event. What's like one mindset shift about approaching benefit strategy? Like what could it be? So address all of them if you'd like.
Yeah, I think when it comes to looking at your open enrollment and communication strategy, it really starts with maybe a retrospective review. What have we been doing? What worked well last year? What didn't work well? What questions are coming up most, like the dependents age 26, aging out? Where are the biggest points of confusions for employees, and which group of employees are the hardest to reach? Gives you like a foundation of, okay, we got a certain set of tools that are working well, and we have other tools that maybe we can scrap and shift our focus. It also you take a look at your demographics, and I think you guys touched upon it a little bit. What type of generations are working in your workforce? You know, millennials prefer text and social media platforms. Gen Zs prefer images and videos. So you can build your campaign around your demographics and what the preferences are for these employees. And we talked earlier about looking at the gaps in communications, gaps in your employees being able to access the information, the clarity of the message, the language that's used, and even the timing. Like we keep talking about, it just doesn't want to be at open enrollment because people forget. You have to trickle it out in a monthly newsletter or quarterly, somehow just keep the important messaging throughout the year. Um, and I think, you know, really taking a look at those steps and having a comprehensive campaign that's calendared out throughout the year is key to really helping employees maximize their benefits.
Yeah, just to borrow what you just said, Chris, the calendar is very important. We need to promote awareness. We need to have those messages go out. Open enrollment is happening in 90 days, 180 days. Reminders, the posters, the videos, and I like to say the deadline nudges, right? Hey, you have 7 days before the open enrollment period or the window ends. Please make sure you get your elections in by that one. And then also making sure that communication works for all employees. A lot of employees are telecommuters, right? So we're not just, at the desk. We could be frontline, multilingual employees, just not office-based staff. And employees can be a couple of places. They can be at work. They can be on the move. They can be at home with their family. So the most important thing is to focus on the employee's needs, not just the communication. Collaborate with your broker and get ahead of the process as much as possible by planning prior to receiving the renewal, so that way it would make it a smoother and less chaotic open enrollment season.
Awesome. Thank you. Chris, Shawn, thank you so, so much for being a part of our podcast today and for joining us. And so tell us a little bit more about where people can learn about you, connect with your company, and find all those resources like your monthly newsletter that I love that you'd like to share with HR and people leaders.
Yeah, you can connect with myself on LinkedIn, Chris Labatt, and we can absolutely share with you. We have posts on LinkedIn. Our newsletters are posted there frequently, or we can get you signed up for our monthly and weekly newsletters that we produce.
The same with Chris. You can find me on LinkedIn, Shawn Hill. And I just want to thank the team for just giving us this platform and the ability to talk to you today about this important topic of open enrollment.
Well, thank you so much again for joining us. We'll be sure to drop your links to your LinkedIn and the newsletters in our description of the video. But before we end the episode, we have to carry on our Tea with HRT tradition. Chris and Shawn, since you're the guests, you can go first. What do you have in your cups today?
I'll let Chris go first.
I just have a cup of coffee, Illy Coffee, which happens to be a client of mine. Is one of my favorite brands.
Love it. Shawn?
So I just have water. I just got to make sure you hydrated on these days.
Oh, love it. Allyns?
Usual decaf coffee, but I got my little blue hearts because it's almost the end of summer and I
Cute.
like cherish time with my boys. So I used my blue heart cup today.
Love it. And I have my iced coffee. Every episode, I think I'm drinking an iced coffee.
It's summertime.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Until next time, let's cheers to a no stress open enrollment season. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining us on Tea with HRT. We hope you got some laughs, some insights, and maybe even a few things you can actually use. If you like this episode, subscribe, leave a comment, and tell a friend. Find us on social media. Links are all in the description. And let us know what you think or what you want to hear more about at tea@hrtransform.com. Catch you next time on Tea with HRT, where work meets warmth.